My name is Luca Guadagnino and I am a filmmaker. I'm a producer, director and screenwriter. My love of film is really rooted in my being. I must say that I started to think of cinema or aim for cinema or want cinema since I was really small. I remember that I grew up in Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia, one of the very few positive aftermath of the Italian desperate colonial attempt is that many buildings were built that came out of the architecture of the times. And I remember these very big cinemas in the style of the Italian Art Deco that we can call also the Italian fascism. And I remember in the 70s, early 70s, when I was growing up, going to see films like Lawrence of Arabia or The Argonauts with my parents in this huge cinema that for someone like of my age, 3-4 years, were like the universe, these big, beautiful buildings. And that's how I started to be hypnotized by the idea of this electric light that coming off of a hall was creating these worlds that were so immense and vast, both emotionally and visually. So I started to really nurture more and more the desire of going to the movies, to the degree that I was going to the movies every day when I started to become more independent at the age of 12, 13. And I grew up during the times of the VHS, the home video, and also that was another way of growing up into cinephiliac attitude. So I guess I've been a cinephile and a potential filmmaker since the very beginning of my life. I remember my first time on a film set was, I think it was 1989, and they were filming in Palermo, where I was growing up at the time, the unsung masterpiece that is The Godfather Part 3, the final chapter of the Coppola saga. And I remember that for a kid, for the city of Palermo, that big machinery was something unexpected and wonderful. And I remember I was basically staying every day, as close as I could to the crew. I was looking for the crew through the city. That was my first time. And a year later, I had a more intimate connection to a movie set, which was I visited the set of Jean-Marie Straub and Daniel Huillet. They were doing The Death of Empedocles in the Segesta Theater, the ancient Greek theater, and then the week after they made the theater play, they filmed, and I was there. And the third experience I remember around the same time was sitting with the wonderful Sam Fuller, rehearsing another piece of theater in Gibellina. All Sicilian, let's say, primal scene for me. And how I was happening to be in such a closeness with these incredible masters, I think because I was always very prompt, like I knew where things were happening and I went there which is something that, because of this interview, is for people that maybe wants to step into the movie business now, it's something that I really encourage doing. Call Me By Your Name, it is an accident in every possible ways. It is a novel that I've been asked to read that I didn't found. It is a project that I've been part of as a producer for many years. And then it was something that I felt I had a duty to embrace, because we tried many avenues to make it happen with different directors and it didn't happen. And me, Peter Spears, Marco Morabito, Howard Rosenman, which is the core of the producers that later were followed by Émilie Georges and Rodrigo Teixeira, we all felt that we had to make this happen. It was so long and impossible. We couldn't grasp with so many directors that we tried to get this movie financed for. The one that people know is James Ivory, and it was impossible because really we couldn't get the money to make it his version, which I would have loved to see, of course, being a big fan. My version was the version of someone who made it as a duty, But when I do something, if I decide to do something, I do something with complete investment of myself. I'm not a good director for hire, let's say. I'm someone who has to believe deeply in what he does. And in this case, I think that the success of the movie wasn't something we expected in doing. We were having great time doing it. We took decisions that were really specific, like we moved the action from Liguria, which is where is the book set, and Sicily, which is where Ivory wanted it to be set, to Crema, which is a small town in the middle of Lombardia that nobody really knew at the time. We simplified many of the dynamics. We really brought the story of the great Asimov story to its bones. And I would say we cast the right people because both Timothy and Army, but also Michael Stuhlbarg, Amira Kazar, and Esther Garel, they are so now for me the characters. They were so invested in creating some tridimensional emotional aspect of the life of these characters that I believe that the success of the movie, the way in which the movie resonates and resonated such an incredible way throughout the world, is because of the commitment of these performers. Any filmmaker is nothing without his or her performers. And any filmmakers who knows the job very well and who's not naive knows that there is not such a thing as puppeting an actor to play a role. You need to be making a movie about those characters, but you also need to make a movie about those actors. Bernardo Bertolucci always says that a movie is also a documentary on its players. And I do believe in that. And what does it mean? To what extent this is meaningful for the quality of a movie? I think because if you really make sure that your performer are given the possibility of the breath of life and not of just the acting, you eventually get to a place of emotion that is what people in the audience will be connecting with. So we saw in Call Me By Your Name, for instance, that auroral moment in which Timothée Chalamet became a young man, not only Elio. And that's something that is unique to this movie. When I did my first feature film, The Protagonists, and I shot it in London, I had thought of the movie in a way in which I knew everything I wanted, from the look of the movie, the camera work, the light, and the character, and the actor's way of acting. But it was a very, very harsh lesson I learned, probably the first day, when I realized that the way in which I thought you talk to actors was a failure. You don't talk to actors with a method. You basically have to be able to listen to people and to talk to everyone in the way in which the dialogue arises with the singular person. So basically, the way in which you try to, let's say, direct or collaborate with performer is by being able to listen to people very, very much, and to be specific in your personal relationship with each and every actors. I rarely, almost never, very few times in my 20 past year of career, had made auditions, for instance. I went for the people I wanted because I had seen their work or because I met them, meaning that I went for people that I loved or I was attracted by, for whom I had a desire. And desire means the curiosity to find a way to know each other. So for me, yes, of course, it's creating a safe environment, even though the idea of a safe environment, it's kind of a sort of neo-language that I am a little wary of, because it doesn't mean, what means safe? It's something to be said and understood properly. For me, it's more about a trustful environment. It is about a mutual trust, so that you are in trust with the other person and the other way around, to both together and jointly explore things. Because as Georges Sadoul wrote in his History of Cinema, the, let's say, legendary staple for every kind of student of cinema, the first line of the book says, cinema is about human beings. And so, when you do a movie, you are dealing with the extremities of the human behavior. You have to find a way to represent through your story something that becomes universal once goes out, even if it's particular in its approach. So you have to be in trustful relationship with someone who's going to be make happen on screen these kind of excess of emotions. Never allow anybody to tell you that something is not possible. I think that is a sort of, it's a trade. When they say to you it's not possible, the translation of that is we don't want you to do it.